Hi, today we are recording a Visplore training session. We are sharing the screen and demonstrate the basic analysis of time series. My colleague Harald is going to do this on a data set which is actually shipped with Visplore, so you can all follow along and learn the basics of Visplore that way. Hi, Harald.
Hi, Thomas.
It would be great if you could start sharing your screen now.
Sure.
All right, and Harald already has started up Visplore. So maybe just one or two words about Visplore. Visplore is a Windows application that you can install on any laptop or desktop or Windows server, and then just start it from the start menu or from the desktop. And once the application opens, you see this welcome dialog here. So in the beginning, it's possible to connect to some of the existing data sources you have to get that data in and start your analysis right away. For the purpose of this training here, we will load a CSV file. This is one of the easiest ways you can do is just load a CSV file, and in 1 minute you're you can start analyzing your data right away. But there are several other sources that you see here on the left side. So for example, you can connect to databases like Microsoft, Oracle, MS SQL, SAP HANA, and many others via ODBC. Then there is, for example, also a direct connector to the OSIsoft Pi system, if you're familiar with this. And maybe important to point out in the bottom, there are some connections to external environments. So Python, R, and MATLAB. You see here in the bottom, it's possible to connect to these environments to work with a Python environment side by side, for example. So there is an API that allows exchanging data and results with Visplore from Python side by side, for example, to visualize your data frames, label them, and get the results back to Python. There is an extra tutorial on that. Today, we will just work with a CSV file, because this is actually quite a common scenario when you have a new project with some data that you get CSV files from your customer, for example, or you just have it. All right. So Harald, please, in this location here, we're loading a CSV file that is shipped with the Visplore installation. So if you can, yes, this is where your Visplore is installed. And then if you can open here, you can select one file. And actually, yes, so this is the installation directory of Visplore in the data, the open photovoltaic data set we will be using today. So and from here, we will be using the bigger file. So this one, yes, 27 megabyte, this would be the one for this training. All right, and then here at this point, you can just press OK. All right, so the first thing you see here is a preview dialog of the data set that you're about to load. This is a data set from sensors, and it's from a solar power plant. If you look at the preview here, you see that, for example, in the left column, you have some timestamps. So this is sensor time series with measurements every 10 minutes over several months. And in a 10-minute resolution. What you see here next to it are a lot of sensor measurements, so like power generation and so on. Yes, you can make this bigger. Thanks, that's a good idea to make this dialog a bit bigger. And actually, this data set has actually over 200 columns. Okay, so if you think of it like an Excel table, yes, you can scroll to the right and you see there's actually many, many more columns. Here's temperature sensors. For example, if you rest for a second here, you see temperature and humidity sensors. So the names of the sensors are written on the top. And above that, you also see the types, the data types of the sensors. So actually, this CSV importer is analyzing the data and tries to infer a lot of these things automatically. For example, if you can click this value here, it has recognized this as value, you see that if you discover something detected wrong, you can change it and override this to become categorical, for example. Yeah. Okay, if you do this, then this will change the value to categorical. You see here now it looks exactly like in the file, but in this case, please turn it back to value because these are actually just sensor values. If you maybe scroll back to the very left in this dialog where we had the date and time, it may be worth pointing out that it's also possible if you click the type here it's possible to add a custom date time format if you have something that our importer does not detect. This can be, for example, if you're in a region of the world or something where you have a specific format, then you can use some wildcard characters to detect this here. There's also a bit of a help on this, but I don't think we have to do this at this point because here it was automatically detected correctly. In case you have any questions, please interrupt me at any point. Yeah, then I can explain, of course. Here you can press cancel right now and switch it back to the date time, which was automatically detected. Yes, here, please just do this one. Then you see again how the date and time are fine. Can you again scroll to the right? Because there are some other aspects I want to point out. I think somewhere in the middle, if you can stop in the middle, there are some, yes, here, please stop. Here you see, for example, some categorical data attributes. So here you see these are strings or words. These refer to categories. Here it would be directions of the wind, for example. So this will automatically be detected as categories. And if you maybe scroll to the very right of this table, there is also something that I want to point out. Yes, here, for example, you see a lot of value columns that have missing values. Do you see the word missing? So this is also something that is possible in Visplore, that you can have, if you think of it like an Excel table, an empty cell there. So no value. And these values are detected as missing and will automatically be omitted from computations or from visualizations. Okay.
What would happen if I have something like a character here?
Yeah, you mean like something like not a number or some other word in here. Yeah. So this is actually, if the column has the type value, this is automatically detected then as missing because it cannot be interpreted as a number. Yeah. This can be actually the reason. So an empty cell can be the reason for a missing value, or if you have some string in there, but the type is recognized as a value. That's also missing then because it cannot be represented. Yeah, so here you have 200 columns. Maybe one word about the format that you see here. So this is actually a so-called wide format of a data table where you have every variable in a dedicated column. Can you maybe scroll to the very left again? Yes, so every sensor is a dedicated column, and then you have the timestamp here on the left, and the timestamp is actually identifying each row. Sometimes you have data in a so-called long format, which means that the variable name is actually written in a categorical extra column. Okay, so that you have the timestamp maybe multiple times and a categorical column stating the name of the sensor for the value. You can also load this kind of data in Visplore, and there will be an extra tutorial to show you how you can deal with this kind of data. But this tutorial now assumes that you have data in this wide format as you see it here. Maybe one important, or that's actually the last important aspect that I want to point out here on the CSV importer. A lot of the data is analyzed automatically here based on the first 200 rows of this table. And if something is not automatically detected correctly, there are some advanced options. If you click advanced options below this preview, where you can actually override and change a lot of the things here for this format that is imported. So for example, something like a different delimiter and so on, but this usually is correctly detected. But if you have something in the bottom, for example, you see something, it says row filter, where if you have a very large data set, you could do something like loading only every 10th value or every 100th value, things like this. Or sometimes you have headers that are spread across multiple lines. Then you could use, for example, the option a bit above that says first n lines contain column names. This could be an option if you have meta information on each column written in the second row, for example, then you could also change it to this.
How could I import data where I have one CSV file per week?
Yeah, so if you have multiple CSV file, for example, one per week, but they are actually structured the same, then you can load multiple such files at once, and they will be appended below each other automatically by Visplore. So remember in the previous dialog where we selected the file, one option is that you do a multi-selection there. Okay, so you can select multiple files and they will be automatically put below each other, but this only works if they have the same structure, so the name column names, exactly like in your example. Or if you have very many files, there is actually an option here, quite close to your mouse pointer. It says load multiple files. This is a second option that you can use. So, for example, just loading the first of your multiple files and then selecting the option load multiple files here. You can try this out. You can just click it. Then it would also load the additional files that lie next to this file from the same folder. And optionally, I think if you can click this for a second, I think here you could add actually some filters to load only the most recently modified 10 files or something that has been modified after some date. Especially in your example with the weeks, imagine you have a folder with 100 such files over the years, then you could use these filters here to load only the files that were modified after the beginning of last month, for example. But for now, please uncheck this option here because we just have one file. Did this answer the question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so I think once we have set up the preview and everything looks good, we can continue at this point by pressing OK. You see the dataset is imported. And there is just one last dialog here before we see our first visualization. And this is this so-called role assignment dialog. Now, this dialog, most of the time you don't need it, but actually it allows you to set to tell Visplore something about the semantics of your variables. Okay, so for example, imagine this, you have a number, a value typed column that was imported as value, but actually it's something more discrete or categorical, like operation mode 1, operation mode 2 or something. Then you could tell Visplore here that this actually has a categorical semantics. Or what you see here, right now you're seeing time axis selected and on the right side date time is checked. So when you have a file, for example, that has multiple columns with timestamps, then this might be a point where you are prompted here to select one such date time column as your primary time axis. Okay, you will need this for time series plots and so on. So this might be a scenario where you have to change something here, namely to select only one of your date time variables as your primary time axis. Okay.
Does it always need to be a date time, or could I also have something like a value as time axis?
Yeah, that's a good question. And yes, it doesn't have to be a date time type. So it can be an index, for example, that is just a number that increases, or maybe even something, a real valued index that could also be used. Then you can use this as a time axis as well. So you can just try here for a second to uncheck date time and check the next one instead. Okay, maybe it doesn't make sense in this case, but you see how you would change such an assignment from one column to another. So yeah, this could also be float typed or real valued. And actually, even if you have a data set without a date time or a time axis at all, it also works. Then you don't assign this role at all, and you can still look at some visualizations that make sense, like correlations, for example. Okay, so at this point, please switch this back to the date time, because this was automatically detected as the right primary time axis. I think at this point, you can just press OK. All right. And now you see your first visualizations of this data set. Now, one specialty of Visplore is that you don't start now here with a blank canvas and you have to build up your visualizations from scratch, like you would do, for example, in Excel. You would build every diagram on your own. But here you actually start with some well-defined entry points into your analysis. We call them cockpits. And in this case, you see the first cockpit started on this data set, showing you an overview of some trends and distributions in this data set. What do we see here actually? So on the top left, you see a table of some statistics for each variable. Okay, so yes, in the top left quadrant, this would be a table showing you a list of the variables that you have, along with some statistics, like the mean value for every variable and some others. Okay. Mm-hmm. You can, for example, click on the name of another variable. Just click another one. Yeah, this one, for example. Yeah, so you see these check marks actually allow you to select more than one variable. And whatever variables you select up here are shown in the bottom of this cockpit Here, for example, you see now an orange and a blue timeline in the bottom. Okay, so this would be the timeline visualizations of the two variables that you have selected. So do you see them in color in the bottom left of this?
I see them.
Yeah, and on the bottom right, you would also see the histograms. So these show the value distributions of them. Like, for example, you would see if they look normally distributed or different. So in the bottom right, where you see these two gray histograms, these mountains, this would show you the value distributions of the two variables. Yeah. Bottom right of the screen is where I'm talking about these histograms. Yeah.
Okay.
But maybe let's focus on the time series visualizations first, and you can even close this histograms view by clicking on the dark gray bar above it, which is labeled this distribution. Yeah, this one. If you can click this for a second, yes, then you see that this is collapsed and gives more space to the time series visualization. And maybe also this bar chart on the top right, where you have these blue bars, you can also collapse this by clicking on the word drill down on this gray collapse bar above it. Yes, so that we really, if you collapse this, now you see actually really just what I want to focus on first. This is the list of the variables and the variables visualized as timelines below.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I filter this list here?
Yes, good point. You can filter this by typing. So here you see actually on the left that you have 195 variables. Okay, this is written on the left side of this list, and this is quite a long list. So you can scroll through it as you just discovered with the mouse wheel if you want, yes. But it's also possible to easily filter this list of variables if you just type something in the white text box above the list. So above this list, there is actually something called filter variables by name. This one, yeah. If you can click into this white field and then type, for example, just type voltage, for example. Yeah, and then you see how the list immediately updates down at the bottom, and you see now it's only showing 33 variables. Or you can remove voltage again and type something else like temperature if you want. Then you would see all sensors that have the word temperature in their name. Yes. So you see, don't even have to type the full word because it's really just matching that word against the names of your variables. And if you click one of these variables now, can you just click in this list below on the name? Yeah. Then you're seeing this variable now. And actually clicking the name is a nice shortcut to just see this one variable whose name you're just clicking. So if you can just click through them a bit, you see, you don't even need the check marks if you click the name to just look at that particular variable.
Okay, so there's a gap.
Yes, and this is actually one of these missing value periods that I was mentioning before. So here you see a gap in the data that actually lasted quite some time. And if you take a look at the statistics, for example, for this time series above, the mean value and so on, then this would also not be considered in this mean value. Yeah. And exactly this 15.4 is just using the valid values, not the missing ones. And in the very rightmost column of the statistics, you actually see that this is 29% of the values here are missing. Okay. So this column shows missing percent and shows you how many values are missing. If you want, you can actually sort this table by this percentage of missing by clicking the header.
Okay.
Yes, this one. If you can click this, then you see actually that some of the columns have much more missing values. And this is actually very useful if you want to see, if you have a big data set, how complete it is over time. Yeah, to use this missing percent to just see which of them are afflicted by many missing values.
Okay.
Okay. Now maybe select the temperature, outdoor, Bright County, weather. This one, yeah, where you have this one, or maybe select the next one first. This indoor, yes, this one. Okay. Select this one. I want to show you something that's actually a very important action that you do with a longer time series like this one. You can easily zoom into this time series. Okay, so if you see, for example, there are some periods that look like some spikes or some peaks going up there in the end, you see some peaks going up, or here, yes. If you want to see something like this closer, you can zoom in, and you can do this by dragging a rectangle with the right mouse button around the area that you want to zoom in. So you are using the left mouse button right now. So you have just selected this time period. This is also useful, but I will show this in a second. So please maybe undo this. So what you have done here, you can press this little X here. Okay, this one would be one way to just get rid of this and have all the data selected. I will show you selection in a second. No, do you have a mouse with a right mouse button attached, right? Then
yes.
You try making this rectangle with the right mouse button. Yes, then I have a blue rectangle. And once you let go, exactly, you see how this is zooming in exactly to that particular rectangle that you would like to see. Okay. So you can try this again. You see this, there is a little comb pattern, this oscillation pattern here in the middle. Maybe you can try again with the right mouse button to, okay, yes, you also, yes, maybe you can zoom in again. Yeah, right. What you also discovered was the mouse wheel, which also helps you here. Can you just do it with the mouse wheel a bit? Yes, the mouse wheel is just moving it right and left, so panning to the right and left. But if you press the control key on the keyboard while doing the mouse wheel, yes, then you see it's also zooming out or in exactly at the location where you have your mouse cursor. Okay, this is maybe also familiar from some graphics programs that you can do it like this, and very helpful if you want to zoom out or in just a little bit. Okay. And sometimes if you want to zoom out completely again, you don't have to use the mouse wheel. There is also a shortcut button in the very bottom left of this view. If you see here, yes, these arrows pointing outwards, and if you can just click this button, just with the left mouse, yes, then you see it zooms out completely and shows you the whole time range again. Okay. Good. Now maybe you can zoom in once more just to practice it to one of these patterns or spikes that you just had taken a look at. And then I'm showing you something else that's important. So if you discover something like this, maybe this is unexpected, yeah, because this temperature is actually going very nicely, but sometimes you have this anomaly in here. If you see this, what you can do is at any point you can export an image of what you see here, because for example, you want to put it into an email and send it to a colleague, or into a Word or PowerPoint for a report. Okay, so if you want to export that image, you can just press the little export button on the top right of this time series view. So no, maybe a bit below where you have this timeline view, there is an own export button here. Yes, this one. If you can click this export button, yes, then you see that you get a little preview showing you the image that you're about to export. You can adjust a lot of things here, like for example, the size in which you export it on the right in pixels, or which parts of the image you want to include or not include, and the font and so on. So there's a lot of things here, and this is actually also, yes, so here you could switch the font to something else. Yeah, exactly. It's even shown in the preview how it updates. And you can export it as an image file, or you can export it to the clipboard. So by default, you're exporting it to the clipboard, which means the Windows clipboard, so you can just paste it in another tool.
Where would I change this?
Yeah, so in the top left of this preview dialog, you see target. Yeah, target clipboard, target file. If you changed it here to file, then you could specify a file name. Okay. But target clipboard is fine for now, and then you can just press OK. And at this point, this image is put into your clipboard, and you can now go to another application like your mail client or your Word, for example, and then here just paste it with Control V. Just paste it, or do right-click paste, yes, and then you see the image is here. Okay, so this can be a first workflow just to get the graphics that you see here out very nicely, to use them in some follow-up analysis or a report or something, communicating about it.
Okay.
Okay, maybe you can go back to Visplore.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so maybe now we can select another time series where I want to show you something, or actually no, we can do this right away here. What you tried before in the beginning was to select actually a time period. And you can actually do this by just selecting with the left mouse button in this timeline view, this oscillation pattern. So drag a rectangle with the left mouse button. Yes, now the left one, and just let's go at this point. And then you see now that you have this orange rectangle and the view is highlighting or emphasizing the selected part. We are calling this defining a focus of the analysis. Okay, so basically this oscillation pattern is now in focus of your analysis. And this is also what is shown if you see in the top of the Visplore window, are some orange bubbles here shown, this orange focus line. And then you see in this line, you see actually a description of what you have currently selected as the focus. You have selected it using a rectangle, which means you have selected all data records in your table that belong to a certain time interval. Okay, so here between the 2nd of September to the 3rd of September from these times, this would refer to the time part of this rectangle. And the second one next to it is temperature has to be within this interval of 17 degrees to 37 degrees. This is the vertical span of this interval. Okay, so
this?
Yes, you can change it in various ways. Actually, one way is to click it. Maybe if you want to click it, then you can actually type some hard borders here. So if you want to select, for example, everything from 17 to 20, let's try this out for a second. Yes, then press enter to accept the change. Yes, then you see how the rectangle has become smaller because the vertical span would only go to 20 degrees. And you see how no values are selected anymore because nothing is in this rectangle. If you change it back to 35 here, maybe instead of 20, yeah, press enter, then you see how this is actually updating. Okay. And one thing you may have noticed at this point is that actually the other visualizations also update when you change this. So the statistics on top are actually just computed right now for the values that are in your focus. So if you take a look here, for example, at the minimum and maximum value of this, maybe you can close the little dialog that we have here, this one, yeah. If you take a look here at this the blue line here, temperature, bright county weather, you see the minimum is 21.46 and the maximum is 33. And these would be just in your rectangle, the minimum and maximum values that occur. Okay? So this actually is just updating whenever you change your selection to really compute the statistics again for this. This may get may need some getting used to, but this is actually very, very helpful for quick answers to some questions that you have here. So if you move, for example, this rectangle around a bit with the left mouse button, just drag it somewhere else. Yes, you see how the statistics immediately recompute up there. Okay, and if you move it back to the oscillation, then yes, again you have this in focus.
Okay.
And two things are very, very important here. One, you always in Visplore have the raw single values also accessible. So if you can, in the very, very bottom right of the Visplore window, you have a gray bar called table. This is actually dark gray area on the very right next to this, right? Yes, table. If you click here, then you see a raw values data table. And this is shown like what we've seen in the beginning in the preview dialog, or what you would be familiar with from your Excel. Here you see the table, okay? And actually you're just seeing the records that you have in your focus, so in your selection. So only the records that belong to this oscillation time frame here are shown here. So you see exactly when this was. Yeah, and as you move your mouse here, you even see the points in a bright blue color highlighted on the left side. Okay, so also this table is linked with the other visualizations so that you can see exactly what's going on here. So this is one important part of Visplore. You don't only have the aggregates on top, like a mean value, but also always the individual records to inspect what the values actually were. Exactly. And now you see how this also updates in real time.
Okay.
And maybe also important, when you see a pattern like this, sometimes you have the question, how long is this pattern actually in terms of time? And this you can see in Visplore in this footer line. In the very bottom of Visplore, you see a line that shows data records, 23,422. So this is the full length of the table in terms of data records. So how many rows does the table have? Then you see in focus, you have 35 of them. So these are just the selected ones. This corresponds to 0.15% of your data. Okay, not much. But you also see that this corresponds to 5 hours and 50 minutes of your data. So this would be how long actually the selection that you made is in terms of time. This rectangle around the pattern would show you this oscillation lasts for about not quite 6 hours. Okay, so sometimes this is quite an important information to see if you select something in the data, how long is this overall, is this significant at all? And then this you can always see in the bottom of Visplore, this line, yes. Okay.
Okay.
So maybe one last thing with this oscillation that I want to show you here is sometimes you want to document this even better than just exporting an image. You can actually just annotate such a finding within the visualization. Okay, so you can annotate it by using our sticky notes feature. Just putting a sticky note next to this plot. And you can find this in the top toolbar of Visplore where you see a lot of icons. So in the top of the window, there are a lot of icons here in this line. Yes, in the very a bit more right, there's a yellow post-it. Yes, if you click this to create a new sticky note, yes, you have a sticky note now. And you can move it around by this dark yellow part. Yes, good. And here you can type something. So for example, you could type something like an oscillation or an anomaly or something like you want to annotate this with. Exactly. And this is anchored to exactly the point where you put it. So that the correct anchor point is the top left corner of this window. So yes, you can actually align it nicely with this plot. And this now belongs to this visualization. So it's put here. And when you have annotated it, you can go one step further. You can press the button on the top that says plus story. You see this 1 centimeter, 1 inch above. Yes, if you click here on this plus story button, then actually you're turning this visualization into a story page. It suggests a title here automatically, and you can just press OK at this point, and you will see what happens. Visplore is actually making a story page out of this plot. You see on the left side, a new pane has opened, where this page that you just made is appeared. Okay, this actually looks a bit like a PowerPoint slide here.
Is this now a static image?
Actually, this is, you can click it if you want. What this is, yes, what this is actually a snapshot of your Visplore analysis that you can revisit later on. Okay, so you can keep track of your insights in such kind of a journal and make your story pages. And once you open it, you see it's only showing this particular graph. And it's not just a static image. It's actually still fully interactive. So you can, for example, if you want, move around the selection or zoom in or out with the mouse wheel and things like this. So it's actually really a fully fledged snapshot of your analysis, focusing on that particular part that you turned into the story page. And you see, you can use this to build up your story from all the insights that you had during an analysis. Okay. Now you actually already edited a bit of the story page by zooming in and out a bit. And you see on the left where it's in red, you see it's highlighted, but next to this red frame, there is a little check mark that you could press to accept the changes you just made. Or if you don't like them, you can revert them with the little undo button below. So in this case, let's just opt for accepting them because you didn't do anything wrong. Yes, and now you see that this page is updated.
Okay.
Now, at any point, you can go back to your analysis with all the visualizations you had before by clicking the part on the top left, which says continue analysis. Yeah, this one. If you click this, you're back at where you just were with all the visualizations back. Okay. Now at this point, yeah, do you have any questions here? Or otherwise I would show you one more thing with some filtering, some outliers, because I think often you have some outliers in the analysis.
No, not up to this point.
Okay, so then maybe just close the pane with the story for a second so we have more space. Yes, here's the same. You can click here. Okay. All right. And maybe you can also get rid of your annotation for now, this oscillation. Just click the little red X, yes. And also the focus that you have with your selection of this rectangle, that there is a way where you can always clear the focus. I have showed you this orange area in the top where these orange bubbles are. Yes. There's also the little X symbols where you can remove the focus, and I would suggest clicking the one on the very left next to the word focus. This would, yes, if you click it, remove the whole focus so that you have all the data again in your focus, and the statistics, for example, refer to all data again now. Okay, and maybe you can also zoom out in your time series. Maybe in the very bottom left corner, you have this little icon to zoom out. All right. Now at this point, may I ask you to switch to another time series and select the second one from the bottom called temperature outdoor, Pride County weather, by just clicking its name. Yes. And now what you see here is, this is also a timeline in the bottom, but this timeline has a lot of spikes going down to 0. Maybe you can zoom in again on one of these spikes. Yes, but start a selection from here. Yes, with the right mouse button, that's good. And you see, this is a time series that's actually always around 15, 20, but then it drops to 0, which is not really plausible on such a day in August. Okay, so these would be spikes that are not plausible, and they will irritate you when computing a mean value, for example. Yeah, you don't want to have them in your analysis. I will show you now how you can easily filter them out. So maybe you can zoom out again by clicking the bottom left symbol again, yes. And then with the left mouse button, you can select all of these outliers. Maybe before you do this, can I give you another hint? You can actually give this time series plot a bit more space by just dragging the border between the table and the other visualizations. Yes, here, but yes, if you drag this, and you can do this between any views, also to the top where you have the statistics, you can also resize by dragging this around, yeah? So sometimes this is important to give the views more space that you want to focus on. And now I would ask you with the left mouse button to select the spikes, so that the points that are actually going down to the bottom. Maybe you can just try intuitively how you would select these points. Yeah, yes, you're doing it very good. So here you're selecting a rectangle that just holds these points. Okay, and you can adjust it a bit. Maybe you see, yes, starting it on the very left, exactly. So you have all of these points. And also what you see maybe here on the very right border, you see some of the line also going into your selection. You can make it a bit smaller vertically. Yeah, that's good, perfect. Now, right now you have, yeah, wow, okay. Actually, I've mastered already the zooming, so you can make it a bit smaller to exclude this completely. Yes, very nice. So now you see that you have actually all of these outlier points selected, and you can nicely see it if you zoom out again with the zoom out button in the bottom left. See, now you have all of these outliers selected. Now, can you tell me how long this was in terms of time? How many data points you have selected, or how much time this corresponds to?
I think this is...
So here in the table, you see actually all of the points that you have selected, okay? And you see also in the second column that they really are 0 values exactly.
Okay.
But I can tell you again where you find the duration of this. So in the bottom of Visplore, you have this footer line. This gray line, okay. Yes, it shows in focus you have 80
13
points.
13 hours, 20 minutes.
Exactly. So assuming you have a regular time raster like we have here with these 10 minutes, then this would compute here for you that 80 records in focus correspond to 13 hours, 20 minutes. So you actually also know how significant this is. And what can we do about these outliers now? We can easily filter them out. This is one option that you can do. You see these 80 records, and you can do this by pressing one of these little buttons above this orange rectangle. So sometimes, yes, there are some gray buttons, some orange buttons, but there is the little gray button with a minus. No, right next to this one, yes. If you click this one, it will filter the records out. But yes, okay, you did it already. Great. So this filter minus button will remove the records that you had in focus. And you also see this because they're gone. So in the timeline, you see they're not here anymore. And also in the top of Visplore, there are some orange bubbles now in the filter line. So you see what you had before here as a rectangle is now in the filter line, and it's showing you have with the minus, this orange minus before, filtered out the values that were in this rectangle that you had selected.
Okay.
So can you, just because this was a bit quick, can you remove the filter again with this little X on the very left? This one, yes. Yeah. So now you see the filter is gone and the values are back again. Yeah. So maybe you can select them again. Just do this very quickly again, and it doesn't matter if you have a bit more. But just to do this again, just select them with the left mouse button. Yes, and sometimes you don't see these little buttons to click. Yes, like this. So this is just a hint. If you don't see them, just bring the mouse again over this orange. Yes, over this orange rectangle, then the buttons appear again, and you can press this little filter minus symbol again. All right, here you go. So you see how quickly you can actually just graphically select something in the data like an outlier, and with one click filter it out. Okay. Cool. And maybe it's important to note that filters out entire records of your table, so entire rows. Yeah, so these rows that you have selected with these outliers are now gone, meaning that the table on the right is actually now just holding the records that you have kept and not filtered out.
And can I export the data somehow?
Yes, that's a good question. So actually, of course, if you filter something out, usually a next step would be to export this cleaned table out. And yes, so one way to do this is in the table view that you see in the bottom right, so the table with all the individual records, here there is again an export button in the top right corner of this view. Yes, if you click this, then you can export the data table that you see here. Again, you get a little preview dialog like when we imported it in the beginning. So here you would see again what data table you would export. Also, you can choose again the target. Should it go to a CSV file or should it go to the clipboard? And at this point, we are good with clipboard. And you can just press OK at this point. Yes. So this table is now put into your clipboard, and maybe to paste it in another tool, you can open your Excel. Yep, and here you can just press Ctrl-V to paste this data table. So this may take a few seconds, yes. And now you see that this has pasted. You can, yes, this trick to make it bigger. And you see that your table is here, and you could save it. So if you go back to Visplore for a second, there is one remark that I want to give you here. And that is, this table is always showing you only the records that you have in your filter and in your focus. So if you filter something out, that's exactly what you want, because you want a clean table usually without the filtering. But if you have something in the focus, something selected, then also this table would only show these rows in focus. So if you want to export basically the whole table, make sure that your focus, for example, has nothing in it but all the data, and also that you only have these filters that you actually wanted to have before exporting it. Yeah, yes, so like this, right? When you select something, you see only these records would be now exported if you just exported it again. Okay, so this is actually quite a lot what you can do with Visplore. You can load a CSV file in just a minute and then get some visualizations out without configuring much. even selecting and cleaning out some outliers or other parts of the data and export it again, or export some graphics for a report. Okay, so this is actually quite a lot what you can do interactively in this data set already.
Okay.
What I would show you next, if that's fine for you, would be some correlations, because that's actually a very important task. Is if you have sensor data, you want to see which of them have some correlating behavior. And for this, I would ask you to select a second time series. So here we have the outdoor temperature from Bright County. Let's correlate it with the indoor temperature from Bright County. So that's the one below. Use the check mark, please. Yes. Then you see you have both of them selected. And so this is the first aspect of correlation, is just to look at them together. Yeah.
Can I scale this differently?
Yes, you can scale this differently. So by default, it's showing one range for every selected time series. So here you see in blue 0 to 50, in orange 0 to 50. But if you want to align them, for example, by each one's minimum and maximum, you could do this. So on the left side, on the left corner of this diagram, it shows individual scales. This is written vertically. Yes, there's a button, individual scales. And you could choose here to have a different scaling. So for example, you could do something like min-max normalization, which means, yes, if you click it, it would now overlay the maximum and minimum value of both time series and scaling it from 0 to 1. Okay, so this would make sense if you want to see really, if you don't have any outliers anymore and you just really want to see maximum and minimum aligned. Another option that you have there, if you want to look again, would be Z standardized, Z standardized in the bottom. If you click this would align them by their mean value and standard deviation. So the mean values would now be at 0. The standard deviation would be at plus minus. The standard deviation would be the extents. And now you would see how nicely they actually correlate, because despite the original ranges, really now they are aligned now by their mean value and by their dispersity. Okay, but you also see that sometimes one of them is going, the orange one has bigger spikes, for example, than the other.
And can I use adjust the scaling that they were initially in?
Oh yes, you can go back to the initial scaling just by clicking again this button on the left and clicking individual scales. Yes.
Okay.
So now in this case, it actually has, because they are quite similar, given in the same range like 0 to 50. But let's just imagine you want to have the orange one, not from 0 to 50, but let's say something only from 20 to 50. Then you could, for example, or let's say from 0 to something lower, then 0 to 40, let's say, then you can click the 50 on the top, the orange 50, yes, and say it should go only onto 40, for example. And if you type 40 here and say OK, then you would see, for example, that the range for the orange one has been adapted. But you can also reset it by just going to yes or 30 if you want, yes.
Mm-hmm.
The benefit of this is that you really see them labeled still, okay, 0 to 30. And one insider tip, if you do this, is if you adjust multiple of them by typing your own bounds, start with the leftmost one, because this is kind of the master range, and then hand your way from left to right, because then it will actually be exactly what you want. But this is just a tip, yeah. Because if you change this now from 0 to I don't know, 60, yes, and say OK, then you see how the next one is rescaled accordingly. So that's the tip. If you want to rescale multiple of them, start with the left one and hand yourself going rightwards by typing the ranges. Now here I would suggest give again something like 0 to 50 or 40, yes. Okay, that looks good. Okay. Now that's the most simple way of correlating, is just overlaying the time series and then zooming in maybe. But another one that's very important is the way of, for example, doing a scatter plot between the two. And at this point, I would ask you to maybe close the table view again. Yes, with this red. And then opening the other gray plot that we closed in the beginning, labeled distribution on the right. Yes, if you open this up, then you see, okay, the histograms, but maybe you switch over to the middle plot labeled scatter plot. This is scatter, the word, yes, there's another tab here, scatter plot. If you click, then you see now you have a scatter plot of exactly those two time series or variables that you have selected. This would be indoor and outdoor temperature of Bright County in this case. And now you see every point in this scatter plot is one timestamp, yeah, and you see usually they are correlated very nicely because they are lying basically on this diagonal line with a bit of a spread. But you also see some points are lying off the diagonal here on the top. Now, what are those? If you want, you can just select them with the left mouse button. Just select a few of them. Yeah, you see, you can select also in this plot. And as these plots are linked, the time series plot and this one, you see actually how these plots are highlighted also in the other views. So that's the purpose of the focus. Yeah, you define here a focus, the other views also focus on this. And maybe the rectangle is not the best tool to select this because they are actually lying somehow circular in this space or even a bit skewed. Therefore, I want to show you something else. You can use other selection tools. So, and this is actually very important. Can you make the scatter plot a bit bigger by just dragging it at the border between, yes, this one to the left, yes, okay, maybe fine like this, yeah, stop. It doesn't matter, I can show you like this also. There is some menus in every visualizations on the top right where we have also exported images before. And okay, so this in the white buttons, white icons a bit to the top right, and there's a gear wheel symbol. So this cog wheel, yeah, this one labeled options. Can you click this? Yes. And then this is actually a very important thing for every visualizations. You have this options menu. So if you click here on the first option on selection mode, yes, then you can see other modes here. For example, there would be just vertical and horizontal intervals, but here we need the lasso tool. This is the rightmost one. If you click this, then you have the lasso tool selected. And with this, you can actually drag and form a lasso around the points that you want to select. Left mouse button, yeah. Yes. Okay. And now you see, as you have marked these points, all of them are highlighted also in the time series view. Okay, and let's maybe investigate this. Do you want to maybe zoom in around some of these highlighted points? So with highlighted, I mean the colored ones, yeah? Most of them are grayed out, but you see some of them are highlighted in color. Use please the right mouse button to zoom in around some of them. Yes, maybe you can zoom in a bit more. And you see again, these are the oscillations, the patterns we have already discovered before. Now, before we have discovered them a bit by chance, right? Because I told you which time series to look at. But here we have discovered them in the scatter plot by just being some outliers. And you see, you can just select it in the Visplore visualization and then immediately find out what happened here by having this highlighted also in the time series view.
Can I save this selection somehow?
What do you mean with save? You mean like saving to have it later again if you or? Yeah.
So or do I need to redo this lasso selection?
No, God, because you did such a nice lasso here. Of course, you can give this selection a name and go back to it later. So you can do this by just hovering with the mouse over this lasso area. And then there is, again, these little pop-ups, these windows where you have filtered before. There is the word actions. A few centimeters to the right, you see the word actions in this little tool. Yes, click it. And then you can say here you want to create something. And you can create a named condition from this. So maybe if you see this top area condition, if you click it, then you can give this lasso a name, this selection. So here a name is suggested, but you could also select it and say my outliers or something like this, or outliers. Exactly. And you can press OK here. Right. And now you see that a new toolbar has appeared on the top of Visplore labeled conditions. So below the focus, there is a new bubble, an orange bubble, bit below, which says outliers. And if you leave your mouse on this, you even see these outlier points highlighted down there.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is actually something that you can revisit later on. So maybe just to try this out, you can zoom out in the timeline. If you go to the time series view and click the zoom out button in the bottom left, yes. Okay, and now maybe select something in the time series because with the left mouse button, select something else. Yes. Okay, but now what about your nice lasso? Where is it? Yeah, that's the reason why you can save some things like this in your conditions bar up there, where you have the outliers lasso still as an orange bubble. So if you go back up here, you see, if you hover this, the points are still here. So if you click these outliers, and then you can say put in focus to select again exactly these points.
Can I edit this also?
Yes, you can also edit this. You can do this by clicking again on this outliers bubble on the bottom one that you had clicked before. Yes, and there is the possibility to say edit graphically, not the second one, but the third option. Yes, if you do this, then you see it has been put back into the focus. You have your orange selection tool again, so the shape of the lasso is back, and you can move it around still. And then in your focus toolbar, which is above, yes, you see now a checkbox and the red X. If you accept the changes you made to these outliers, you can accept it, yes. And now you would have updated this thing again.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Maybe one more thing that I wanted to show you. So maybe you can click the outliers once more, this orange bubble outliers once more, put in focus. If you click it and put in focus again, and then zoom in again in the time series about some of these oscillation patterns. So you see they are actually occurring multiple times. Maybe zoom in a bit more to one of them or so. Yes. And then I just wanted to show you can make again a story page from this, and maybe you open up the My Analysis, or maybe first you can do something similar. Just to recap this, click again the plus story button on the top of this time series view. This one, yes. You could give it a name. You can type oscillation or something, or other oscillation. Okay, and then press OK. And then you see you have also this second oscillation, but in this case you also have it along with the other time series where you see it's only the indoor temperature doing the oscillation and not the other one. And what you can also do is, for example, you can make a story page that holds more than one plot. Yeah, and you can do this by pressing the button on the left in this whole story area. There is a button with a plus called Add a New Story Page. So this is here, this middle. Yes, if you click this one, yep, then here you can also give it a name. You can leave it also as untitled story page, it doesn't matter. But what's new here is that you also can select on the right side which visualizations of the ones you have you want to be in this story page. So if you see on the right side here some check marks, a check mark for statistic, a check mark for time series. Do you see this? This is in the right part of this dialog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this would be the plots that you include in the story page that you are just making. So for example, you can, let's say we want to keep all three of them. Let's find the statistics to select which time series to look at, the time series and the scatter plot. And you can say, okay, in this dialog to create a page that holds all three plots. And then you see you have made a page that contains more than one plot. This is very useful for making something that another user can still consume interactively later on. For example, if they wanted to, let's say, look at another time series, they could just now in the statistics give the checkbox to it and see this one as well in the timeline. Okay, so with this you can actually choose and author which parts of the interactive tools should be still in your story and which parts are not. So in the easiest case, you just make single view pages, but you can also do something like this.
Okay.
Okay. And maybe one very important aspect is that you can save this this story now, and actually you can save any Visplore analysis.
Wait, if I want to undo this, my changes.
Yeah, if you don't like the changes you made in a story page right now, then you can press the little button next to in the left side where you have your story pane. Yes, this revert button, you can press this to undo the changes. Then it is back to how it was before you started editing this page.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were at the point of saving this analysis. And to do this, you can press the little save icon in the very bottom left corner, which says save. This is one way where you find it. Yes. So here you can save your analysis as a Visplore file. Okay, it has the file extension .visplore. And here you have to choose a file name. So you see a path where it is storing this right now. You can give it a name, something else, or you can select the path where you store it. Doesn't matter. Yes, you can call it my story or something. And then before you press OK, please wait a second, because I wanted to comment on the checkboxes above here. So you can choose here how to deal with the data that you have loaded. If you have the embed data check mark checked, it will actually put the data that you have loaded into the Visplore file as well. Then you have a one self-contained Visplore file that you can give to a colleague, and even if they don't have the data source, they can open it and look at it. Okay, you can even give it to a customer or a client. Then if it's their data, for example, and you have analyzed it for them, then they can get this as a self-contained Visplore file. The second option above, keep link to data source, would additionally memorize which CSV file was loaded here, so that if the CSV file changes, you can also reload it next time for the CSV file back then. This is actually more important if you have something like a database or so, that you keep the link to it and reapply it to the live data source every time. But important is the embed data, because if you do this, then you have a self-contained file that you can give to someone. And if the data set is really huge, like a gigabyte, then you can also choose to uncheck this and just have the Visplore file storing the configuration and everything on top of it. So maybe that's important also.
I could use could I use this as a template for new data?
Yes. So actually that's important. What I wanted to mention is, regardless of how you use these checkboxes here, what it always stores is the configuration of the Visplore views and the story pages that you have made, how they look. So even if you don't embed the data and you don't keep the link to the data source, you can always use the Visplore file as a template. If you, for example, have next month new data for the same structure, but you have new values, then yes, you can use the story actually as a template to revisit the same analysis on the newest data. And you would do this by just importing the new file next month, and then on top of that, loading the Visplore file and saying load it for the current data. This is possible to use it as a template, and it's actually a very important use case.
Okay, cool.
So right now at this point, I would just ask you to save this analysis as a file by pressing OK. Then you see there is a little progress bar on the bottom right. It's now embedding the data into this file. And after you have this, after it's done, you have saved it as a file. Okay, and this file you could share with colleagues, and you could even share it with customers using our free reader software. But anyway, at this point, the last thing that I wanted to show you with the story is also the possibility that you can export a story as a PDF and share it with anybody, even if they don't have access to Visplore. So there is a little export button below the story. Yes, if you click this one, then you can export it as a PDF. You could even embed a company logo here as a header image file, but let's not do this right now. This is actually self-explanatory, I think. You can just press OK at this point to just create a quick PDF from the story we have made. All right, and now you see how this has opened up in a PDF viewer, and this is something you can really share with anyone. Okay. So actually, we've seen quite a lot. We've seen how easy it is to get in your CSV file, to look at the time series, to also clean out some outliers, to export graphics or files, and to document your analysis and your insights as a story that you can share with anybody. So either we, so what do you think? Is this fine for a first training? Do you think this matches your use cases already quite nicely?
Yes, I think this is nice. What I would be interested is if I have a variable, how can I search for correlations with this variable?
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because you don't want to build your scatter plots all and then, yeah, to search for correlating variables. Okay, maybe this is a nice last point that I can show you in this training session. So at this point, we have only been in this first cockpit for looking at some trends and distributions. And I have mentioned in the beginning that actually Visplore offers several cockpits or predefined entry points into some analysis questions. And correlation analysis is actually one such questions where we can use a specific cockpit for that. So at any point, you can switch the cockpit to another cockpit by clicking, on this change cockpit button. Exactly, you found it. So here, if you click this button, maybe you click cancel for a second here at this point. Just want to show you. And maybe often it's the case that you don't have this analysis pane on the left open. Can you maybe close this My Analysis pane for a second? Because often it will look like this for you. Where can you find this change cockpit button then? Well, you have to open this My Analysis pane on the left first, and then press the change cockpit button here. Yes, maybe just to help you all find this. And then here you have a list in this dialog of the cockpits that you can switch to. So far we've been in this first one called Trends and Distributions, but the second one is for correlation analysis. There are many others, for example, one for dedicated pattern searching. There is one for regression, but I think these would go beyond the scope of this first training. I think the only one that I want to show today is the correlations one, and you can start this by a double click or by clicking it and then OK in this dialog. Yes. Okay, in this dialog you can also just press OK now. Okay, and now you can hide the My Analysis pane on the left again, so we have full space for this cockpit. You see that still some of the values that you had selected before are still selected if you look at the filter and focus part in the top of the cockpit. So that these orange bubbles are still there. Maybe you want to reset at least the focus that you have of your outliers lasso. If you look in this focus area, yes, exactly, you have cleaned it and you have cleared the focus actually and see all the data that you have here. Okay, so when you switch the cockpit, you're taking along actually the filter and the focus that you had from before. But what do we see here actually? This cockpit looks a bit different than before. On the top left, you see this red matrix. Okay, so this triangle here of some red cells. This is actually showing you correlations between the variables. Okay, so maybe you can click on one of the reds of the very, very red cells. Yes, this one, for example, or this one. Okay. So the red color indicates that these are two variables that are actually very much correlated. And what variables am I talking about here? I'm talking about the one that are written right next to it on top of this thing next to it. So phase voltage, forecast 1 and forecast 3. These would be the two variables that we are correlated here. And you see these two variables also in the top right, in the big scatter plot. So the top right section of Visplore now shows the clicked pair of variables here in big. Okay. So this is actually a shape that looks almost linear, but with a little dent in it. And in the bottom view, the time series would also show you the two variables that you have correlated now by the click in the red matrix. So actually what this red matrix on the top left is a map of where you have some correlating pairs of sensors. Can you maybe click some other cells there? Yes, click this one. You see how this cell is now shown on the top right and in the timeline below. So this is actually your map for navigating and clicking at some interesting pairs of variables. So maybe this visualization is something that you have not seen before. I don't know. This is a scatter plot matrix. And at this point, it may be helpful to hint that we have actually a help, an online help for every visualization and many, many features of Visplore as well. So if you see such a visualization and you don't know exactly how to read it or what you can do here, there is a little blue help question mark button in the top right of every visualization. So this is really in the top right of this plot. You see a little blue yes. If you click this, all right, then you see our online documentation opening up exactly at the documentation for this correlation matrix. Okay, and here you would see some things like, okay, how can I interpret this? How do I get to this visualization? What can I do here? And if you scroll down a bit more, for example, then you see actually there are such documentations for every visualization that you find in Visplore. Okay, so this list can actually be interesting for you to see what other possibilities you have. And you can click one of them and see where you can find it, in which cockpit, and so on. Okay. Yeah, this is maybe one of the more special visualizations in Visplore that allows you to look at many, many sensors at once. But I think that would go beyond the scope of this tutorial. Okay, but I think it was just helpful to hint at this documentation. And actually, on the left side of this navigation, you see also, yes, this blue list of step-by-step guides. So if you want to do some additional tutorials and so on, this list can guide you through chapters like analyzing correlations, for example. Yes, this one would actually be a step-by-step guide along also with some video showing you how to do some correlation analysis in depth. So this is actually some tutorials that you can also look into later on if you want to deepen the understanding of one of these chapters. Okay, but actually, if you can maybe go back to Visplore and focus on the question you had, which means you want to find sensors that correlate with a particular variable. And for this is the last view that I would describe now. This is actually the visualization called target correlation, which you find in the second tab here. Yes, if you click this one, this looks a bit different. And it's actually a list of all your variables. All of them are correlated with one specific target variable that you want to correlate them with. So right now, this Pearson correlation is computed with the target variable phase voltage bright county, which you see up here in this color legend. But let's switch this to something more interesting now. We have some photovoltaic data here, so why not look at the correlation with the power output of such a plant actually. So maybe you can click the button above this button here in the button in the color legend here, this one, yeah. If you can click it, and then you can switch here the target variable. So this is the second entry. Yep. And here you can select it from your long list. Maybe you type something like power here. Power, then a blank, and then gen for generation. Power, blank, gen. Yeah.
I can combine some multiple terms here.
Yes, actually. So everything that you write here with a blank in between has to occur in this filter. Mm-hmm. So let's click on the top one, bright county, for example, power generation bright county. This one, yes. All right, and now you have selected this as the target variable. And the list below is now showing you, yes, ordered by the correlation, the top correlating sensors on top. And yes, if you click this here, for example, generator current would be the variable that correlates the most with this. Or here, this apparent power, for example. So you see these are some other power-related measurements of this plant. These are the most correlating ones. And you can, if you want, you can scroll down to the bottom very, very briefly of this list. You can do this also with the little scroll bar on the left. So you can move this little scroll bar. Yes, if you click, yes, if you move this by dragging the gray part in the middle, no, maybe the gray part in between. This one you can drag it down, yeah, to the bottom. You see on the bottom you have the ones that have a negative or an inverse correlation. If you click this, for example, then you see there are some sensors that actually get larger as the power output gets smaller. Yeah, so some inverse correlation. This also is in your data, and this would be in the bottom of this list. Maybe you can scroll up to the very top again for a second with this little scroll bar. Yes, move the gray part, yes. And then you can see here how the sensors actually nicely correlate. And if you click the top ranking one, again, the generator current, here you see also something else.
Can I resize this a bit?
Yeah, if you want to, yeah, for example, some of the names of the sensors are quite long, right? And you can't read them. Yes, so you can also here drag the border between the names and this red part. Yes, if you drag it to the right, for example, then yes, then you get it.
This looks better, yeah.
Thanks. That's a good question and makes sense. So yes, what I actually wanted to show you here, that this correlation, if you look at the time series, actually the time series in the bottom does not look the same all the time. So you see that that at some point between August and September, the variation of this actually changes quite a lot. Yeah, you see how densely blue it is before, and here it changes a bit. So maybe it doesn't make sense to compute the correlation for all of this at once. And again, you can, for example, use the selection tool to just select the time period on the left, which looks homogeneous, or the one on the right, yes, like this.
Okay.
To select the time period here, and you see immediately the correlation coefficients on the top also recompute for that time period part.
Can I filter out the rest?
Yeah, you can, again, like before, press the little gray filter buttons you had in this little toolbox, but this time I would not press the minus if you want to filter out the rest and actually just keep the one in selection. Click this one with the little filter end. Then you keep only the selected data.
Okay, cool.
Does this answer the question you had with correlations?
Yes, it does. Cool.
Okay.
Can I also export this list here?
Yes, of course. You can just press the export button in this list as well. And here you can export it as an image or as data. Maybe it makes more sense as data. And then again, you have a list here which is exporting this as a let's say table, where for every, okay, in this case it has a lot of columns, but nevertheless it's exporting it as a table where every column shows the correlation with one of the sensors, and the second column is always the p-value of the correlation. So if you export this and paste it in Excel, then you also have this as a data table. Yes. Okay.
Okay. I think I don't have.
I think this is enough for the first session. But I think one very important message that I wanted to get across here is that actually it's very straightforward to load in your data table file from a CSV and to get out some simple visualizations, just clicking through the time series, cleaning something out, exporting something, and making a story from your insights and doing some correlation analysis. Yeah. So please don't worry that Visplore has a lot more icons and so on that you have seen along the way. But actually, I think and I hope that simple tasks you can do just after this one little training session. But in case you want to deepen your understanding and look at some other things, like for example labeling some time series or using our Python integration, then yes, you can click again this help button here. The online documentation is one aspect that you've seen. Okay, this is this one. Or if you go back to Visplore, there is also a second resource that you can use here, which is our Video Academy. This is the screen link. And if you click this, then for example, here you see there are also more videos like this one. For example, on the left side, you see something for the Python integration and some other chapters that you can take a look into. Okay. Yeah, here, for example, this is also important if you want to compare some time periods when there was a change in the process and you want to change which of your sensors have also changed. What was the effect of this change? Or what could explain the change? This chapter might be worth looking into because this is actually an operation that goes with just a few clicks in Visplore and much more difficult in any other tool that I know at least.
Okay.
Great. I hope this was informative for you.
Thank you very much.
And in case any more questions come up, please don't hesitate to drop us a question. On our webpage, there is a form where you can post questions at any point, or you can just drop us an email at any time.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Thanks.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you for joining. And I will stop the recording now. And I wish you all a good time with Visploring your own data.